Popular music is dumber, duller, and more homogenized than ever before. This isn't a matter of taste or subjective opinion. It's an objectively provable fact. A 10-year analysis of songs that spent 3 weeks or more at #1 on the Billboard charts found that song lyrics are getting measurably less intelligent. Chart toppers in 2006 read at a 3rd to 4th grade level. 10 years later, the intelligence of song lyrics has dropped by an entire grade. The way this trend's going, in a few years, song lyrics won't even be a challenge for 7-year-olds to understand. The study found that Beyoncé, Lady Gaga, Kesha, and Maroon 5 song lyrics are particularly stupid. Researchers in Spain, who used a huge archive known as the Million Song Dataset, also found that pop music has become blander. Studying pop songs from 1955 to 2010, the team discovered that the diversity of transitions between notes, chords, melodies, and other sounds has diminished over the last 50 years. The Spanish study also found that producers are baking volume into songs at the production stage, making them artificially louder. This overcompression has the effect of sucking all the dynamics out of a song. Everything is beginning to sound the same. Individuality is being drowned out. In fact, pop music is now so devoid of originality that producers are using computer algorithms to determine which track will be commercially successful, and then ordering their manufactured sock puppet artist to record it.
I think pop has made itself completely irrelevant as an aesthetic form. It's like looking into a hall of mirrors where all you see is the reflection of other mirrors. There is so much shameless just adaptation of other people's style that it's almost impossible to tell one person apart from another. Individuality has been erased and wiped away.
So why is popular music becoming dumber, blander, and more homogenized? A primary reason is that many of the artists you hear are having their records written and produced by the exact same people. So because in many cases the artists themselves have zero originality, input, or talent, what you're hearing is the characteristics of the same producer on all these different songs by different artists. In fact, many of the songs that grace the top 10 throughout most of the year are written by just 4 different people. These producers then just keep cannibalizing each song to create the next hit. That's why everything sounds identical, and the record companies behind these producers try and sue each other all the time for copyright infringement. But because the songs are marginally different, the charges never stick. The music industry goes to great lengths to hide the real identities of these producers, to maintain the illusion that someone like Taylor Swift actually contributes to the writing of her own songs. And any artists under their control who do actually try to write their own songs are ostracized and cut adrift. Of course, artists used to have to be actually talented to get a recording deal in the first place. Now any stupid fucking bimbo or brain-dead twat can be dragged off a reality show, chucked into a recording studio, and have their shrill warbling auto-tuned for mass consumption. But when it comes to performing live, there's no auto-tune to hide the fact that you have zero talent.
Mama, I just killed a man, put my gun up to his head, pulled a trigger, now he's dead. Mama, like that.
Songs are also sounding dumber and more repetitive because the dwindling attention span of the listener demands more hooks. So whereas decades ago you only had to write in one hook to get a hit, now there has to be a hook in the intro, the verse, the bridge, and the chorus, because a radio listener will change the station on average every 7 seconds unless they get this continual brain stimulation from a recurring hook.
I have a very short attention span.
But our point is very simple. You see, when...
Oh, look, a bird!
There's also this bizarre exaltation of modern DJs as if they're magicians of musicianship, when they're just pretentious wankers whose sole function involves pressing a button every 5 minutes. At least old school DJs used to require a few practical skills to entertain a crowd. Now, thanks to electronic dance music, EDM, the enjoyment of which requires the listener to be mashed off his tits on bath salts. Even Paris fucking Hilton is calling herself a DJ. Here's another thing. The subject matter of song lyrics has also noticeably changed. Yes, we've always had sappy, romantic drivel. But whereas a group like Pink Floyd once riffed on the precarious balance between authoritarian power and the individual,
All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
now Iggy Azalea riffs on, well, you tell me, because I've got no fucking clue. While Morrissey and Johnny Marr once fused poetry and melodic genius to venerate Oscar Wilde, now Nicki Minaj and Fergie fuse putrid nihilism and vacuous verbal diarrhea to venerate their asses. As the Foo Fighters' Dave Grohl said, if the #1 song is about your butt, that's a problem. And yes, I know there were pop songs 20, 30, 40 years ago about meaningless nonsense. But how many pop songs are there now that mean anything at all outside of booty, booze, and bitches?
Remember the 60s, that era that a lot of people, have these glorious memories of, which they really weren't that great those years. But one thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives, who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
So we've established that pop music is getting dumber, less diverse, and more homogenized. And that must be what the audience wants, right? Otherwise there'd be no financial incentive to make it that way. But then when you look at movies and television, diversity, intricacy, and quality has improved as time has gone on. The plotlines of today's Netflix hits and movie blockbusters are infinitely more complex and nuanced than the comparatively simplistic TV shows and films of the 70s and 80s. So why does the consumer demand to be challenged when it comes to TV shows and movies, but yearn to be lulled into a bubble-wrapped coma when they load up iTunes? Why are we demanding smarter entertainment when we choose what TV shows and movies to watch, yet settling for increasingly dumbed down pop music? Well, it's because we're being brainwashed into liking songs that we would usually hate as a result of the simple trick of repeated exposure. Studies of the brain show that our reward centers light up from hearing the same song over and over again, even more so than hearing a song that suits our musical taste for the first time. By saturating radio, television, and online airplay with the same insipid crap produced by the same people, record labels can make us embrace a form of musical Stockholm syndrome. By force-feeding us in this way, they can override our own personal taste, and we eventually give in. After all, everyone else likes it, so it must be good, right? Pop music is the equivalent of junk food. It's quick, it's easy, it's all around us, and just like McDonald's, the producers stick to the same cookie-cutter recipe, because it's what people have been indoctrinated to want to consume.
I don't feel so good.
But while movies and TV shows remain pretty segregated from our immediate lives, music is something we carry with us. It's the soundtrack to our day. It determines our emotions. So as the world around us becomes more perilous and chaotic, we look to music for familiarity and reassurance. This explains the continued success of a band like Coldplay, one of the most trite, banal, and meaningless pieces of dross to ever inflict itself on the music world, led by a frontman who is utterly incapable of writing anything other than lame cliches and tedious generalizations. Here's a band that's still trying to convey some kind of quasi-authenticity, yet whose latest album was produced by the same people behind Rihanna and Katy Perry. Well, as John Harris explains, a band like Coldplay maintains its popularity by acting as a kind of existential balm for humanity. The more dangerous, violent, and illogical the world appears to become, the more predictable, vapid, and unchallenging popular music needs to be. So Coldplay, and many others like them, provide a kind of musical safe space for their arrested development fans. Their lyrics get more blithely optimistic as the reality of the world gets darker. So long as Chris Martin is prancing around in front of bright colours, reassuring us all with his catchy hooks, the masses are calmed. Everything is going to be okay. So in summary, everything is being dumbed down. Everything is being made to sound the same. The music industry is now largely controlled by a handful of mercenaries who have strangled originality and replaced it with predictive algorithms. Virtually everyone that you see is little more than a programmed robot, spewing out noises that a computer has decided upon beforehand. That's why everything is so fucking sterile. That's why there's nothing subversive about music anymore. Because whereas musicians used to be interesting people and have actual personalities, and that's where the authenticity of the music came from, now they're more akin to hand-picked Stepford wives. None of it is real. None of it is authentic. But it's still popular because an entire generation has had its brains rewired to think that a rotten McDonald's burger tastes like a premium fillet steak. And that's the truth about popular music.
What?